Hey guys, Dr. Caffery here. Today I want to discuss with you gluten-associated cross-reactivity. So this is a topic of much misinformation on the internet, and today I want to set the record straight. So a lot of this dialogue started in 2013 after a study was published from immunologist Aristo Vojdani on cross-reactivity between gliadin and various food peptides and proteins. So gliadin is simply a peptide of gluten that is most commonly seen to be reactive in individuals with celiac disease. So in this study, they looked at individuals that had celiac, and they looked at cross-reactivity between this alpha gliadin component of gluten and various foods. And what they found was 7 foods showed cross-reactivity. The first one was dairy, and alpha and beta casein protein showed the greatest cross-reactivity, but they showed cross-reactivity to various dairy proteins: milk, milk butyrophilin, whey, milk chocolate, and it was milk chocolate that was cross-reactive. It wasn't chocolate. I've seen some misinformation regarding that. So the next thing was yeast. And the cross-reactive yeast was a combination of brewer's and baker's yeast. The next one were oats, and they used oats from different cultivars, and they only found that some of the oats were cross-reactive, so not all of the oats, and it was depending on which oat cultivar they received it from. And they attributed that to different concentrations of an oat prolamine called avenin. So that's something that they felt perpetuated or promoted, rather, the gluten cross-reactivity. So beyond those 3, we also saw cross-reactivity to corn, rice, and that was white rice, and millet, as well as instant coffee. And so coffee is something that instant coffee showed cross-reactivity, not other coffee extracts that were checked in the study. So in the study, they also mentioned that the allergen statement on the instant coffee they used suggested that it might be cross-contaminated with gluten. So it may not even be a cross-reactivity mechanism. It may just be a cross-contamination mechanism in this circumstance. So really, we only had 6 true foods that showed cross-reactivity, and 1 may just be cross-contamination. So what does this information mean? So basically, it means if you have immune reactivity to alpha gliadin, then there's potential that you can react to these other foods that I just mentioned. It can elicit the similar or same immune response in your body that gluten could elicit. So how do you know if you're reactive to alpha gliadin? Well, this is if you have gliadin antibodies run in your blood. This is something that's the most common gliadin antibody that's checked. So there are other isomers of gluten that can be problematic as well, but alpha gliadin just being the most common one. So if you have reactivity to this, then you would want to pay special attention to these foods, whether you were doing an elimination provocation diet or if you were doing a panel to look at reactivity to these other foods. So there's a panel that I typically use from Cyrex Laboratories, and it's called the Cyrex Array 4, and it looks for all these foods I just mentioned, the cross-reactive foods, but it also looks at sensitivities to other gluten-free grains. And that creates another point of confusion on this topic. Some individuals think that these other gluten-free grains, aside from the ones I already mentioned, are also gluten cross-reactive. They're not. They're just a part of this panel that was composed by this lab to look at some additional food sensitivities aside from the things that we know are gluten cross-reactive. Okay? All right, so hopefully I've cleared up some of the confusion on this topic. And this is something that I think is important to know about, especially if you have sensitivities to alpha gliadin or you have celiac. So work with the practitioner that you are working with, or find someone you can work with that can help identify if you have gluten-associated cross-reactivity mechanisms in those circumstances. Thank you so much for listening. That's all I have today.